someone came across my timeline yesterday, and man, it just makes me angry as hell. I wanted to go through this piece here. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe if you like this stuff. I'm gonna jump right into this. It's from Mike Cernovich, an awesome dude, but this is the he's awesome. This isn't. I don't mean this as any dig against him, but this is the exact example of the problem I keep complaining about. We have a two-tiered system of people over the age of 65 and people under the age of 35 right now. You have an old versus young, and our problems are all downstream of the old not comprehending the world that we live in anymore. And so everything's getting ripped apart by this. You have older people who don't comprehend the world. And so you get the predictable complaints about everything. And they just continue to rip everything apart because they don't want to actually address the problems because they think the problems don't exist. But so he says here, boomers are a scapegoat. Sometimes is yeah. I'm not trying to like recite his whole story, but claims boomers had it easy. They went out to eat every way and they blew through money. They went. This wasn't true. My dad and friends worked in factories. They were awful jobs full of loud noises and suit. Dude, you didn't even make it through a paragraph without saying something. Just come back to reality. Young people can't get jobs anymore, and these factories have closed down and they're not offering jobs. Young people can't. They're buying food on credit. They're getting buy now pay later schemes to buy food. They can't afford groceries. They're not getting any jobs at all. Their jobs are being given away to H-1B visas. They're being given away to visas. They're hiring 7-Eleven cashiers on Visa right now. Saying these were awful jobs full of loud noises and soot. Young Gen Z would do anything to have a job so easy as the problems are just loud noises and soot. They can't pay their bills at all. You're telling me that this would pay their bills? They would take it in a heartbeat. This isn't a problem. This is a really good job. When the factory was closed, that was it. You lost your job. In the pre-internet, you couldn't rebrand your life at 35. Options and information were limited. This is just psychosis. This is a complete inability to recognize some pretty basic stuff. This is looking at the world with your eyes shut. If you have a job and somebody else has a job, if you're looking for a job and someone else is looking for a job, you're both competing for the same job. If the internet is given to you, it's also given to the other person. You're still fighting on equal footing. You're still competing with the same people for the same jobs. Options and information were limited. They're limited the same exact way right now. You're spread across the entire country for job opportunities, yes, but so is everyone else. You haven't actually said anything here. Mortgage rates were 10 to 20% in the late 70s and early 80s. We're not even at paragraph 3 without problem. When you look at a mortgage, the most principally affecting aspect of the mortgage is the principal. Hence why it's called the principal. If you have a mortgage for $30,000 at 10 to 20% over the lifetime of the loan, it's going to be like what? $90,000? Worst case scenario, it actually triples. If you have a 7% mortgage over the lifetime of the loan of a 30-year loan at $300,000, you pay $600,000. The principal is the largest factor. 10 to 20% is nothing. 10 to 20% is nothing on nothing because it's an interest rate on a small amount. If you paid 100% interest on $30, you'd owe $60. If you paid 1% interest on $300,000, you pay $303,000 for 1 year. The principal. Boomers keep saying this line, interest rates were 10 to 20%, when they actually capped out around 16% in the 1970s. At the rate of 16%, the average mortgage affordability to average income was 1/4 of what it was now. That means if you want to take how much it costs for you to own a home, if it was by 1970s prices, at the peak of the 1970s, take your current mortgage, divide by 4. That's the actual numbers. Take your mortgage payment and divide by 4. You think that 10 to 20% is bad. 10 to 20% is 1/4 of what it is now. My great uncle was drafted in the Vietnam War. Some of my friends and classmates would have had PTSD nightmares. They didn't get post 9/11 GI Bill or great benefits either. Boomers graduated high school, still boys were sentenced, caught in cannon fodder, returned home, forever changed, and were told to figure out on their own. Okay, respect to all those men who did it. I love our veterans. But again, like, every single paragraph is delusion. Does he think that people aren't going into the military and get PTSD now? The actual number of people who were drafted in the Vietnam War was around like 3% or something. It's way smaller than you think it was. It's a very small portion of the population that actually got drafted. Saying that 3% of the population got PTSD, he's saying this as if other generations aren't going to war. But he literally cites a different war that we actually went into in the same paragraph. Post 9/11 GI Bill, that was... We went into the Middle East. We've been in the war in the Middle East for like 2 decades now. How can you say they were drafted in the Vietnam War and they got PTSD, which is horrible, but he's acting like this isn't the active reality right now? This is the actual scenarios that they're living in right now. We've got one paragraph where things are worse than this. Another paragraph where things are the same as are actually worse than this. Another paragraph, things are worse than this. And another paragraph, things are the exact same. Boomer white men were actively discriminated against in hiring. This is the exact complaint. This is literally DEI hiring. Quite literally is the complaint of DEI hiring. It's the exact same complaint. It tells the story of being denied for promotion. They're getting denied the entire jobs. Not even bothering applying for the fire department. My dad was denied a state police job for being a white man. This is the active reality right now. This is what we're trying to stop. You're not saying anything with this. It's the pot calling the kettle black. You're not saying anything. You're not... We've got worse. We have it worse now. We have it worse now. We have it worse now. We have it the same. We have it the same. The sum is things are worse now. My friends and classmates were told they were better off because they were living in largesse. The Schwab man would deliver food to their houses. That was a luxury. But that wasn't much better than the process of pizza and fish sticks that you could get at the grocery store. This is someone born with a silver spoon in their life trying to tell you what hardship is. This is what this is. We didn't get frozen pizza. When I was a kid, we ate rice and ground beef because it was cheap. Frozen pizza, you know when we had frozen pizza in my home? Because we were too forward to go out and spend on luxuries like frozen pizza. Frozen pizza was a luxury. The only time we ever had frozen pizza was my grandmother was visiting. She would make frozen pizza. I mean, it wasn't frozen when she cooked it, but she would bring frozen pizza and she would cook it. Like, my mother suffered for my brother and I. We didn't get frozen pizza. She couldn't afford it. She couldn't afford going out and buying cheap processed food that would only feed us for one meal. We got rice and beef. Rice and ground beef because it was $1 each. I understand the frustration that young men have, but they need to live in reality. No, dude, you need to live in reality. Everything you've said here is either the current situation or easier than what we're having right now. You need to come back to reality. People can't afford to buy a house right now at all. This is a period where people could buy a house, getting a job whose problems were loud noises and soot. You need to come back to reality. They would do anything to be able to live a life where they could buy a house off of loud noises and soot. The reality is they're competing with people from overseas for jobs in their own hometown. You need to come back to reality. You live in a fake world. You drove a beater car. The literally next sentence, Cash for Clunkers removing used cars from the road. What do you think happened to the prices of cars then? They were buying beater cars for cheap because they could afford it. These people, because of this, can't afford the beater cars at all. Sorry, they can't afford the cars at all because they're gone. So to get a car, you have to spend more on a car. All you're describing with this sentence is that people have it worse off now buying a more difficult car to buy and paying more for the same product. Embarrassing to be dropped off at school in a car that would backfire like a gunshot went off and had rusted out doors. When I was in elementary school, we had the same exact thing. It was this old shitty van. It was this terrible, crappy van that eventually just died. It just died when I was a kid. We had it from, I don't even know how long. Not that long, because it just died of age. You know what we did after that? We started walking. We'd walk it'd be 5 miles to school in the snow every day when I was a kid. That was my senior year. It was about a mile when I was in middle school. Still snow. Minnesota winters. You had snow like a foot deep and you walked through it to get to school. Plows didn't come in time. The plows would just tear up the road. They didn't get the sidewalks at all. So you just walked through foot deep snow to get to school because we didn't even have the car that had rusted out doors. You think this is the comparison that needs to be drawn. His biggest problem was being embarrassed by the car that he drove, not whether or not he had a car at all. This is the boomer psychosis. They don't understand that they're not being scapegoated. It's deservedly. because he's describing his troubles, the troubles of someone born with a silver spoon in their mouth. This is the kid who complains about about getting the wrong color iPhone and doesn't comprehend that nobody else in the class has an iPhone at all. Even the rich people didn't drive cars as nice people have today. A car payment was seen as an unnecessary evil. Swapping out leases and getting a new car every 5 years was unheard of. Do you know why they're doing this? You just listed it out earlier. Cash for clunkers. You can't buy a car without a car payment because they're so damn expensive, because the car market is flooded, because someone got rid of all the clunkers. You can't buy the beater car at all. So now you have to overpay for cars. They're not... He's describing this as somehow this is how easy we have it. Doesn't understand that people are doing this out of desperation. This is someone borrowing money for things that they can't afford out of desperation. Not because they're living lives of luxury and they can pay it off. They're doing it because they don't have another choice. You drank Folgers coffee because that's what the store had. Talks about there wasn't a debate over you should get $5 coffee. You know who gas stations coffee was nasty. That's why I invented flavor coffee creamers. Do you know why? Or do you know who actually buys that $5 coffee? It's like that rich white girl. It's that Instagram thought that shows herself on Instagram showing off her Starbucks and thinks the worst thing that ever happened was daddy didn't give her 10 grand. That's who's buying Starbucks. People aren't actually buying the $5 coffee. You go to a Starbucks, they're older. I've never been in a Starbucks. The closest I've ever gotten is a Caribou, and everyone there was older than me. The coffee shops are like the rich kid garbage. The reason why people have them in schools is because you could get $5 there. $5 for a coffee, and you could sit there all day with free internet. $5 for free internet. That's what it was. $5 and you could sit there and bring a whole study group. That's what they were doing. That's what the coffee shops knew, that they were doing this too. They couldn't go anywhere to study. They couldn't go anywhere. That's why they're at the coffee shops. People aren't actually going out to get Starbucks every morning. That's not the predominant group. Nobody DoorDash because it didn't exist. You cooked your own food, lots of rice, beans, crockpot stewed meat, and those awful fish sticks. Again, I had the rice and ground beef. We didn't eat beans. I still don't eat beans to this day. We never owned a crock pot. My grandma owned one, but we didn't have a crock pot. We just cook stuff over stovetop. And these fish sticks, we had these too, by the way. I do remember these. They were just cost ineffective, so we stopped buying them. This is like that guy who it's the same boomers who tell you, when we were a kid, we went and got bread at the like 75% off, like the day old bread store. And it's like, dude, we didn't buy the bread at all because it's cost ineffective. You don't understand that you're the one wasting money. Going out to eat usually meant fast food or Pizza Hut. You make one large pizza stretch to a family of 5 or 6. We didn't buy the pizza at all. You had basic cable. YouTube is free. Twitch is free. Rumble is free. Kick is free. All of these platforms are free. Do you not see a problem with the predominant media platform that younger people are consuming is free? Like, they won't pay for it? You had basic cable, which you could pay for, and HBO has an add-on, which you paid for. We can't pay for it at all. There's no meaningful access to information. If you were a bit different or had higher aspirations, you could have found life constricting. This is the same problem now. What the internet did is it expanded these same groups across the entire country, but they're still competing with the same people. If you had higher aspirations of starting a business, your business is now nationwide. There was no regionally dominating company. It's countrywide dominating company. You find life constricting because you're competing over a larger group for the same things. Duh. I wouldn't trade places for a boomer, except for maybe the lucky ones born in California who saw their houses increase 300 to 1,000%, considering themselves geniuses for living by the ocean. These numbers are coming from inflation. That's what people are talking about. And it's a nationwide number. They're not talking about states having overvalued homes. They're talking about how the fact that your house was like $30,000 then, and they used inflation at 1,000% to kill the principal of the mortgage. They inflated their way out of the mortgage. Nobody's talking about having a house that grew in value because they got a lucky neighborhood. They're not talking about how California has a lot of people moving there and an industry that's grown massively over there. And so they bought houses by the ocean that increased in value. They're talking about how the inflation, which is a nationwide number, caused their houses to go up 1,000%. And because inflation resulted in them getting jobs that paid more, their relative mortgage went down by a factor of 1,000. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about people inflating away their mortgage. At no point has anyone said that their houses, that they were somehow not geniuses for living by the ocean. If you bought a house by the ocean and there's more people, yeah, you're good for you. You bought a house and it increased in value. That's a good investment. We're not talking about the investment at all. We're talking about inflation. Zoomers call everyone over 35 a boomer. As a Gen Xer, maybe I was the last plane out of Saigon. Am I out of touch? Yes, you are out of touch. You're a boomer. We're calling everyone over the age of 35 a boomer because, yes, you're out of touch. We haven't gotten through a single paragraph of this entire article without pointing out the obvious fact that things are actually harder. They're either the same or harder now than they were back then. You have just cited no hardship in this article. Not a single one. I couldn't find the video. I wanted to show the face because it's a perfect reaction. But there's this video from a great reporter. This guy, he responds to a woman trying to get to work. And he's like, oh no, work. And this is exactly what this is. He doesn't comprehend at all that literally every single example in this entire article has gotten worse. He's describing the good life. I wish I could have afforded cable. I can't. I wish I had a low mortgage with a 10% interest because I'd be paying less. The interest is a small factor. It takes something like 60%, 50 to 60% to actually really start cranking up the total cost of the loan. You can get an amortization calculator and play with the interest rate versus the principal. You'll see very quickly that's the principal is the one that actually affects the total payment of the loan and your monthly payment. The interest is like a non-factor. $300,000 jumping a 5% interest to a 7% interest is less than $100 change per month. It's $100,000. It's less than $100 change. I did this. When I was buying my home, I did it. I pulled up the interest rates and compared the interest rates before buying the house. The interest rate, jumping it all the way to 10% over mine, changed it by less than $100. The principal, this house versus a different house, changed it by over $500. They're $50,000 different. You're completely out of touch. You did get the last plane out of Saigon, and you need to understand all of this. You don't think so? You are. There are way more opportunity for enterprising men today than in any other generation. There's more opportunities, but that's because of the internet, which brought everyone into those same opportunities. Your competition pool is bigger. You're born into a place that followed a predictable path. Dude, you can't say... I live on farms. I'm surrounded by farmland. Every single one of these people had their life mapped out. They were born into a farm family, and they did farming. It's the same reality for me. It's the same reality for everyone else in Gen Z. Life has always been... You're not describing any hardship, though. You're describing the good life. Yeah. Like, he's a good guy. I mean, I'm pretty sure, isn't this the guy who broke the Epstein stuff? Awesome dude. But man, like, it really is the problem where people are just so out of touch from the real world now that they don't comprehend that how much damage is actually going on. We can prove the numbers. The economy is factually worse. We have economic data. We have the unemployment rates. The unemployment rates are terrifying. It's around like 90%, 80 to 90% of Gen Z did not get a job from their college degree. Even the low end estimate of 80%, think about that. 80% didn't get a job from their college degree. Factually, the numbers are really bad right now. Sorry, man, but you're out of touch. This shit needs to stop. I'm so done with this. If you like my angry ranting, hit the follow button, hit the subscribe button. Mash every single button on that screen until your mouse breaks. In an angry fit of rage. Catch you later.